6 out of 10 people do not know what number they need to achieve in terms of dollars in order to retire and be financially independent. And the reason for that, I think we are in denial. So today's video, we'll be talking about financial freedom, we'll be talking about the numbers, we'll be talking about what you need to retire, how you need to plan for it. Today's video is not for people who are in denial, it's about facing our realities. So let's get started. So a lot of people talk about retirement in conjunction to age. They think that if you are 60 and 65, we retire. But that's old school thinking. Right now, retirement is basically when you are financially free. It could be when you are 30, it could be when you are 35, it could be when you are in your 20s, or it could never be the case. It could be that we never retire. 6 out of 10 people do not know how much they need to retire. And that's a problem because on one end, we will retire with too little. The problem with that is we'll be working forever to keep up with expenses. We are renting forever, we are paying high rents, we are not looking at inflation, we are not looking at all the expenses that we'll have 30 years from now when the same $1 that we have today is not worth $1, it will be worth a lot less. We are dependent on kids, so that's the other thing that will happen, and then we will live on social security and have a poor lifestyle despite working our asses off for decades. The other problem is that we just make too much money and we don't know where to stop. And that's a problem because then you're not enjoying your prime years, then you're not spending time on your health, then you're not spending time with your family when it matters the most, and there is no point of why you are creating all this wealth. There's no point of why you are building all these assets. There's no purpose to it, and therefore knowing your retirement number, knowing your financial freedom number is important. On one end, you would not want to end up with too little, and on the other end, when you are making money, you also need where to stop. So how do we calculate our financial freedom number? Now for that, let's go to my Excel. So that's the Excel that I've created, and what you need to do is you need to input all these numbers in yellow. So for instance, I'll do it for myself. My age right now is 35. I'll be turning 35 this year. What age do you plan to retire? I'll just say 65. 65 is when I would not want to work. Now your number could be 60. The numbers will change accordingly. Your number could be 65. Whatever that number is for you, you just write it here. Now assume that we live for 100 years because why not, right? A lot of people say that what if you die early? I'll talk about that at the end of this video as well. So the active years of work that are left is 65 minus 35. So I'm 35, I'll be working till 65. So my active working years are 30 and I'll be living for 35 years after my retirement. So from 65 to 100, now I could be living less, I could be living more, I don't know. There's a lot of technological advancements, or I can die before 65. We'll talk all about that, but let's just prepare for ourselves to be living till 100, and that actually puts our after retirement years at 35. And this actually is very important. If I'm working for the next 25 to 30 years, I need to plan my finances in a way that can sustain me with all the inflation taken into account for the next 35 years after retirement. And that's important. Now let's assume that the inflation is about 3%. Now right now the inflation is about 8, 10, 12, 13%, but let's just assume that the inflation is 3%. Now let's just input our expenses right now. So if you were retiring today, what would be our expenses in today's money? So we do that, our rent and mortgage. If I was retired, after 30 years, I don't intend to have any rent or mortgage, and therefore it will be $0. So whatever primary residence I'm paying, I've actually paid it off. So that's $0 right now. Home utilities, right now it's $250. We'll adjust for inflation in 30 years in a bit, but for now it's $250 that I'm paying in utilities. I have $300 of property tax. I have $200 of home maintenance, which includes your tap breaking, your floor changing, your roof changing, whatever that is. That's my monthly expense that I've taken. My car payment is about $350. Now, I would hope that we would not have a car payment when we retire, but let's just assume that it's $350. Then we have $180 of car insurance. Now again, it's today's car insurance. It could be lower, it could be higher. We'll adjust for inflation in a bit. We have gas of about $250. It could be more. Again, we could be buying a Tesla, we could be electric. I don't know what would happen, but let's just assume today's expenses. I fill up gas once every week. It could be more or less for you, so just change that for in your case. And then we have grocery of $600. Again, this is as per today's grocery. Now childcare expenses I've taken as zero. Now even if you have kids, there's a very high chance by the time you retire, your kids will actually be self-sufficient and they'll not be taking anything from you or from us. So, that's at least the hope that we have. So that's $0, after retirement. Then $115 of phone bill that we are paying right now. $500 of eating out. We usually eat out once a week, so that's $500. We also have shopping expenses. This is apart from our groceries. So we, can shop for our household, can shop for clothes, all that is $600 roughly. And then we have travel budget as well. And that's something that me and Simran love doing. We'll actually be wanting to do it more often when we retire. So travel budget actually takes the most of all our expenses in a month. So that's $1,000 a month. That's $12,000 a year. I think we'll be spending that or more when we retire, me and Simran both, if our health permit. And then we have other miscellaneous expenses, medical expenses. Obviously we are old, so there could be some medical expenses as well. And let's just assume there's miscellaneous expenses about $500. So right now, if you were retiring today, we would need just shy of $5,000. This is excluding our rent or mortgage. It only has the home expenses taken into account. Now, if we adjust for inflation, and that's 3% inflation, the money that we'll need after tax, all the tax deductions, we'll actually need over $11,000 in 30 years. So this is adjusting for inflation, 3% every single year for the next 30 years. So we'll actually need more than double of what we need today. And that's what inflation does to our money. That actually translates into after-tax money of $137,000, which translates into before-tax money. So that's the money that will come to our accounts before tax of $210,000. It's just a little bit, less than $210,000. So this basically means that by the time we retire, we'll need about $207,000 a year without working. And that's not possible if we don't plan or start planning today. Now let's talk about how much money do I have to save in order to reach that $210,000, because again, I'm not working. And the number is 5.2 million. Now, how did I reach that 5.2 million? Now, there's a very common rule which is called a rule of 4%. So which basically means that if you have liquid assets of $5 million and if you take out 4% of that $5 million every single year, and that money is actually growing at more than 4%, you will never exhaust that particular amount. So for us, that's $5 million, $5.2 million to be exact. And if we take out 4% every single year and adjust for inflation, and assuming that the money is still growing at 7%, which is not that bad, 7% growth is very common over long term, we'll actually never exhaust the money. So that's where the 5.2 million is coming from. If you do this calculation, if I do 4% of this, I will actually get the same number that I have here. So that's how this number is calculated, because your money is growing at 7%, but you're only taking 4% and only adjusting for inflation. And that actually allows the money to keep growing while you are taking money out of these investments every single year. But this 5.2 million number is massive. And the reason why I say that is that basically means that I need to save $172,000 every single year for the next 30 years in my bank account in order to have liquid assets of $5.2 million. And that is something, I don't know about you, but not possible for me. So now I know that my retirement number is $5.2 million. It could be different for you, but this would actually give me over $200,000 of income on my retirement year, and then I can adjust for inflation every single year. But how do we achieve that? Now, what I'm doing is taking steps from today. What I do is I actually invest $500 a week. That could be 20% of your income. It could be less, it could be more. It depends on how much you are earning. It depends on how you plan. But if I invest $500 a week into ETFs and stock market, so that's $2,000 a month. And that would actually translate into $2.5 million of liquid assets in terms of stocks and ETFs. I do not invest in anything risky here. And that will give me, as per the 4% rule, 4% of 2.5 million, which is $100,000 a year. So I actually have achieved just under half of what I wanted to, which is $200,000, by just investing $500 a week. That's actually a pretty big number. It's not a small number, but I'll be achieving that. Now I can accelerate that by buying and selling properties, because I'm from this profession. So there's a very high chance that I'll be able to get access to deals that will actually accelerate this number. I also invest $100 a week in crypto, but I don't assume that crypto will always grow. But if it grows by even 10% every single year, which is very conservative, it could go to zero as well. So that's why I'm not counting it here. But if it actually grows about 10% every single year, I'll have another $1 million coming from crypto alone. And I do not invest in any small coins. I just do Bitcoin and Ethereum, 50% in each. And I'll be talking about that in our subsequent videos. So that would be $2.5 million. I take 4% of it every single year, and then I will never exhaust that $2.5 million because it's still growing at 7%, but still I'll be able to take out $100,000, which is 4% of 2.5 million every single year. Now, even after doing such heavy investment, I still can't achieve my financial freedom number, and that's where real estate comes in. Now, if you remember in my Excel, I actually took $0 for my rent and mortgage. That basically means that I need my primary house to be paid off in at least 30 years. My target is actually 20 years. It could be 25 years. It depends on which life stage we are and how our life goes from here. And the third thing that I need to do to achieve my financial freedom is to have rental income, which accounts for total cash flow of $10,000 a month. That's another $120,000 a year before tax. And this would then add up to $220,000 per year before tax, which is more than what my financial freedom number is. Now, a lot of people might say, oh wow, $10,000 a month of rental income, that's actually a lot and it's impossible to achieve. But we are talking about 30 years now. What happens in 30 years is actually very fascinating. I talked about in the last video. Let's also talk about this today as well. If you invest $100,000 in stocks, for 20 years, if it grows at 10% year on year, which is a pretty decent growth amount, you'll have $600,000 worth of stocks. And if you keep them invested, you're not investing a dime into it, you keep them invested for another 10 years, you will have $1.6 million of stocks. If you take 4% of that, you will get $64,000 per year, which actually gets you very close to your objective of financial freedom. Now, what happens if you invest the same $100,000 into real estate? If you invest $100,000 in a $500,000 property, your equity in that particular house to start with will be $100,000. But that's not the only source of income that you are getting from this real estate. It's not just about the equity, it's about cash flow as well. So let's assume that the rent that you are getting is $2,500, you have a mortgage of $2,000, you have expenses of $1,000 to start with, and your overall cash flow, you actually start negative $500. But let's try and understand what happens in 20 years. 20 years is a long time. In 20 years, if real estate grows 6% year on year, which is a very decent growth, at least in Canada, we have an equity of $1.3 million in that same condo in the house that you are buying. Our rent has increased to $4,300. It sounds a lot, but it's just 3% rent growth that we have taken every single year, which is completely normal. The rent has actually increased by about 20% versus last year. So all these things are very, very normal that's happening, and we are seeing that in the market. The mortgage still remains at $2,000. The mortgage is for 30 years, so we have not paid it down. We are still paying the $2,000 or thereabout. Our expenses have increased from $1,000 to $1,750 because again, inflation, 3%, we need to take that. The expenses that I'm talking about is property tax, property management, maintenance, general maintenance, vacancy, all those expenses that we talked about in the last video. Those have actually now increased by about $750 in 20 years. And our overall cash flow now is $2,000 plus $1,750. That's $3,750 of expenses, and we are getting $4,300 of rent. And that actually translates to a cash flow of $550. And if we keep this property for another 10 years, growing at 6% same, the equity that we have in this particular house is $2.7 million. I understand that it's unbelievable to believe that the same property of $500,000 will be worth $2.7 million, but that's the reality. Rent will be $5,800. Again, it has grown by 3% every single year for the next 10 years. The mortgage is now down to zero because you have actually paid down the entire mortgage and you have not paid it, the tenant has. And then you have expenses of $2,350 that have grown from $1,750 to $2,350 because of 3% inflation again. And your cash flow now is $3,450. So if you repeat this 3 times, if you have 3 rental properties like this, you actually achieve the $10,000 per month of cash flow. So all I need to do is find 3 deals that can actually give me a cash flow of $10,000 per month in 30 years. If I do 4 properties, I can actually do it in 20 years. All this sounds very easy, and to be honest, it is. You need to find a good team who can get you to those 3 or 4 properties apart from the house that you are living in, which is your primary residence. And you need to make sure that you keep those and make that cash flow and make good decisions along the entire investing journey and get to your financial freedom number. The important thing is that you need to make make the next 30-year plan, 20-year, 25-year, whatever amount of time that you think you'll be working, you need to make sure that you make the plan today. And we have that Excel that I talked about. The link to that Excel is in the description. It's the same Excel that I have been uploading on every single one of my videos. Just download that from the website and you are on your way. When I'm talking about financial independence, I'm talking about living till 100 years. I'm being very positive. But a lot of people actually come back to me and say, Navjot, what if I die before 65? What if I die when I'm 40? I know that there is a possibility that you may not live that long. And for that, we should not be doing nothing. There's one more very critical thing that we need to do in order to plan our retirement, and that is buying a term insurance. Now, insurance is not an investment vehicle. A lot of people actually sell it at that, and there is a place for those investment vehicles, those indexed life insurances, those whole life insurances. But the least that everyone should have is a term life insurance in case you die early. You should have at least for 20 years. I have it for 20 years. I'm planning a whole life as well. That's a different topic altogether, and who is it for? However, term life insurance has only one objective, and that is to protect your family from being displaced when you die. And that's true for your spouse or for you. And there are two rules that I have. It should cover 10x times your yearly income, and it should be enough to pay off all your mortgages. So if people are so worried about dying and they are writing in the comments, oh Navjot, you're working too hard, what if you die? You better have life insurance before making those claims, because that's what protects our family. A fun fact here, not so fun for people who are actually in this situation, and I'm being sarcastic here. If your mortgage is for 5 years, and if two people qualify for the same mortgage, and if one of you die, you have to re-qualify for that mortgage. Now just imagine if you had 3 mortgages and 2 people qualified for all those 3 mortgages, and if one of us is not there, we have to re-qualify for all 3 mortgages. And yes, you can sell the house, but you're also displacing your family by selling your primary house as well, and then you're living on rent. Now obviously having a term insurance cannot bring the person who has gone back. However, it's very important for the overall financial health of the surviving spouse when you are away. And that's why it's very important to have a term life insurance that should cover all our mortgages plus 10 times our income. Now, I will make a detailed video on how to choose a term life insurance, what's the general cost depending on age. I'll also talk about whole life insurance and index life insurance and how does it compare to term life insurance, who should buy what. All that will come on this channel somewhere down the line. But right now, if you are planning your retirement, life insurance has to be a part of that. And there are so many consultants out there who will guide you the right way. That's all I have for today. I hope you liked this video. I hope you like the Excel. Do download it from the website. I will be making a lot of detailed videos like these and more on this channel. Do subscribe to the channel if you have not done that. And do share this video with your friends and family who require retirement planning. It will be a good startup video for them to at least start thinking about retirement and not be in denial. मिलते हैं अगली वीडियो में, तब तक के लिए bye bye.